Okay, it's 7:04 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. Regular meeting of the MCC on July 22nd. Claire, could you call the roll?
Len Erickson,
Present.
Dan Haggerty,
Present.
Barbara Mathewson,
Present.
Dave Olson,
Present.
Michelle Weil.
Present.
Welcome back. I'm here that we have all the council people present.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we will be conducting the meeting online today. I want to make sure everyone knows that when you look at the chat display, you do have the raise hand there. If you want to speak when there's an opportunity to do so, use the raise hand. Sure. And with that, we'll start out with our Board of Supervisors report. Mary?
Thanks, Len. Good evening, everyone, Midcoast Community Council members and community members. I'm Carrie Dahlman from Supervisor Don Horsley's office at San Mateo County. I have a few updates this evening. The first one related to Census 2020. Right now, or I think it was as of July 16th, the overall response rate for San Mateo County is at 73.2%, with the Midcoast unincorporated census tract areas showing response rate percentages in the high 60s. So that's looking really good. I do believe the census was extended through October, so there is still time to respond to the census. Another update related to COVID-19, I will just reiterate the latest county information is available through our website at smcgov.org. And of course, as the state has moved into the phase 3 of reopening, one of the latest pieces of information has been the COVID-19 California watch list. A lot of counties in California are currently on this watch list. San Mateo County is not, but I understand that could change as things progress and if cases continue to rise at higher levels. My next update is about the Board of Supervisors. I believe it was 2 meetings ago, Board of Supervisors approved $2 million for the San Mateo County Immigrant Relief Fund. And that is money to help residents who've been economically impacted by COVID-19, but are not eligible for state or federal assistance due to their immigration status. The county is partnering with nonprofit organizations, Legal Aid Society, and the Mission Asset Fund to coordinate and administer this funding. And it was also seeded with an additional $5 million from local developer and philanthropist John A. Sobrato, with an additional $1.7 million from private donors. So I'll paste the link for more information about that in the chat. And you can currently go online, see eligibility criteria, as well as pre-apply for this funding. And there are grant opportunities. There are also loan opportunities. A couple other updates. Just this week, the Board of Supervisors approved a $2 million allocation of coronavirus aid relief funding for the Child Care Relief Fund. So this is to benefit childcare programs that have been adversely impacted by COVID-19. And the majority of that funding will go to childcare centers, and also a piece of the funding will go to family childcare centers. So they'll be providing grants to various childcare providers across the county. And my last update this evening is the Board of Supervisors also voted this week to extend the moratorium on eviction for non-payment of rent for residential tenants. That's been extended through August 31st, 2020. I know it's been revisited a couple of times now, and of course, as time moves on, the Board of Supervisors will revisit that deadline in the future. Those are all my updates, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any council members have questions for Carrie? Claire?
I'm looking for my raise hand button, but
I don't see mine either.
It's in the chat.
yeah, I'm
The
looking there.
the
Okay.
Participants list.
Okay. I just wanted to know if you had any update on the newsletter that the county was proposing that we cooperate with them in making. I haven't heard anything more about that. Do you know anything more about where that stands?
Yes, I believe Michelle was going to provide an update on that this evening. Michelle, would you like me to speak on it now, or I think you're muted.
Yeah, it would be great if you could. I have a crying baby in the background.
Sure. So I know we had presented some ideas around it at past MCC meetings. Part of the goal of this newsletter would be to increase communication with the county, the MCC, and also the residents and community of the Midcoast. So at this point, we've been working on some ideas for the newsletter, and we would like to schedule a meeting with the subcommittee of interested people on the Midcoast Council to meet and review the ideas and work on some collaboration. We were thinking of a goal to release or send out the first edition of the newsletter sometime this summer. So we were thinking maybe around by the end of August would be a goal.
Thank you.
So in terms of the meeting you're talking about, when would you be calling that?
I would say in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're pretty flexible on scheduling. So we'll just connect on that and schedule something virtually.
So anyone with interest should let you or Michelle know. Is that what they should do?
Yes, I believe a couple of people had reached out to Michelle.
Yeah, I had a couple of people express interest, but no one had committed. So please, yeah, if anyone wants to join that group, please reach out to me, and then we'll schedule a meeting with Carrie.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, I'm just say it's Dan. I'm interested, and but I also would like to the council to start talking about some type of a policy paper on the newsletter prior to any writing.
Okay. So you're saying you don't want to start writing until you see a policy paper?
Correct.
Okay. I'm not sure what the timing on that is or where we'll get to it, so we'll keep that in mind.
We had talked about that at the previous discussion, and it seems to me that it's going to be an iterative process of creating this newsletter. And if Dan, I would be happy to have you in that group. But I think that we should discuss what is actually going to be in that newsletter rather than come up with I think having a whole policy paper is going to slow it down. You can definitely have input, and we can all have input. We'll review it with the entire council before it's published. But let's do those two things in terms of deciding what type of content will be in the newsletter and what specific content's in the newsletter at the same time, if we can, just to not slow down the process.
Okay, as long as we're not putting the cart in front of the horse.
Maybe we're putting them side by side, it sounds like. To Sid, if you want to raise your hand to speak, I'm about to acknowledge you, but on the participants list at the bottom is where you'll find the raise hand.
All right, I'm looking
Okay,
for it. But
go ahead, Sid, you have a question for Carrie?
yeah, I still don't see the raised hand, but anyway. Okay, couple things. Carrie, on the COVID update that the county puts out every Friday, is that going to now include the San Quentin population, or do they sort of carve that out as a separate situation?
That's a great question. I know there are some people from San Quentin in hospitals in San Mateo County. So we were working, the county was working with the state to have those numbers not be reflected in the hospitalizations for San Mateo County. So I do believe there is some separation there, but I would have to look back at the report out and see if they specifically delineate that. And I'd be happy to get back to you.
Terry, they don't specifically delineate San Quentin, but they do break out the patients that are from outside San Mateo County,
Oh,
but
good.
hospitalized in San Mateo County hospitals.
Okay.
So they don't count against our numbers, basically. I mean, I'd hate to see us have to go under a further lockdown because we took in some patients from elsewhere, either prisoners or non-prisoners, that's just what I was asking. And then I think I listened in on the Board of Supervisors meeting Tuesday, and I think I heard them say there were 22 that were at Seton. But, that, I don't know if that bounces our numbers up too high. And then just in regards to the newsletter, I might be interested in writing articles, but I wouldn't want to have to be edited and stuff like that. I think, if you're going to spend your time to create something, you probably wouldn't want somebody going in and kicking it around the cat box after you've worked hard on it. But that's just my feeling. I don't know if that's what Dan had in mind about guidelines and everything. Anyway, I didn't also see where you posted the thing. I have a friend that might be able to qualify for that. What did you call it? Immigrant Relief Fund. So do you know if, where's that going to be posted again?
Yeah, I'm just going to paste it in the chat.
Okay, I'll look for it. Thanks. I think that was it for me.
Okay.
Oh, I know one other thing. The county never really put it under Connect the Coast side. They've never put in an emergency evacuation plan. And I've asked several times if CAL FIRE or anybody else is working with Caltrans to clear the vegetation off the narrower parts of our escape routes. Like on Devil's Slide, there's that eucalyptus grove coming downhill from the tunnel into the Pacifica, well, right into the town of Lindemar, or I mean the area of Lindemar. But meanwhile, there's hardly even enough, bandwidth on the side of the road for bicyclists. So I'm curious about that. And if you could bring it up to somebody and ask them. I have called around and everybody kicks the can down the road. So I'd be really curious about that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And I would just add the Connect the Coast Side plan is largely focused around mobility and transportation. I know there are other efforts around emergency evacuations, but I'd be happy to follow up with you via email just to get those specific locations that you mentioned, and I can bring that back to the team.
Okay, what's your email? I'll send it to you.
It's C and then my last name Dahlman at smcgov.org. I'll paste that in the chat as well.
2 L's. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Sid.
And
Thank
Sid, Joe Leclerc said several times they would consider adding that to the next draft. There hasn't been a new draft since January.
Oh, so that draft isn't up for approval yet? I thought they were waiting on public comment. They're going to keep revising it, basically. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Carrie? Okay, thanks very much.
I
Carrie.
did. I had my hand raised. I had a quick question. Carrie, do you happen to know when the next Verily testing is that will be in Half Moon Bay?
I don't know offhand. Claire, you might. They're on a rotating schedule, but I can also look that up pretty quickly.
It's either the 27th or the 28th. Sometimes
They're actually all the Verily testing has been suspended until further notice. And
No,
because
I was on the call today with the county, and they showed a schedule of when the testing would be. They're doing 500 tests a day through Verily, and I know that I saw Half Moon Bay on the schedule. I believe it was one day next week.
It was supposed to be the 28th, but I've been volunteering doing the actual testing, and we've been called off. So there is no testing for the 28th. So I'm on the front line, so I can't tell you any more than that.
Michelle, did they
Okay,
say
Carrie,
why?
could you,
I'm sorry.
Pardon?
what was the question?
Why did they call off the testing? Michelle Dragman,
Oh.
sorry.
Lack of testing equipment.
Oh.
Not so much the swabs, but it was more about the testing length of time that it was taking. It was taking between 3 and 7 days, and the tests become useless. So it's the testing centers, Quest in particular, who are overextended. And in fact, there was something on NPR today, which was they were going to take Quest out of it, and they were going to get more private testing indices involved. So that's the constriction right now. So they decided that all testing will go just to medical personnel for right now.
So Verily was sending it to Quest. Is that the idea?
Yes.
I see. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Okay, so that seems to contradict what I learned today on the county call. So Carrie, would you mind looking into that and coming back to us?
And I'd love to hear what the difference is. Thanks, Michelle. And Carrie.
Okay, Carrie, so you'll
Thank you.
follow up on that?
I will, yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, I do not see other raised hands now, so we'll move forward. I don't see any other government officials here today. Okay, so we'll move forward with public comment. Anyone?
Glenn, before you do that, I do have an announcement.
Go ahead.
I want to remind people that there are 3 vacancies up for election in November. The filing period extends to August 7th. It will probably be extended. I think it's 5 business days if no incumbents file, and we know there will be no incumbents file. But if you are interested, please look at the MCC website or get in touch with me. My contact information is on the MCC website.
Dave, we don't know that for sure because we need to wait until the filing period is over to say that there will be no incumbents.
Well, Barbara has said she's not, and Dan's not eligible.
Len?
Yes, Dan.
Announcement. So I do plan to run for re-election. There's a conflict between the MCC bylaws and the county term limit. It's come to my attention. There's a letter on our website dated March 16th, 2000. Item number 7 says that term limitation in section 2.06 should be omitted. Since the board's resolution specifies that the county elections are governed by the state election law. So, it's been confirmed with county council. I can run for another term, and I plan to do so.
My
Okay,
apologies.
Thanks for the update. We'll follow up to make sure because they've never closed that one, but good enough. Anything else? Okay, Dave, your hand's still up. Did you have something else? Okay. Thank you. So I do not see any hands for comments not on the agenda from anyone. Okay, so then we'll move to the consent
Hey.
agenda. Yes,
This is Sid.
yes, Sid.
I couldn't get that doodad to work, so the raised hand part. I did send you an email, and I didn't hear you address it, so I'm not sure if it's on the agenda or not. Yeah, I think I sent it yesterday. And did you plan to address it?
You'll have to remind me. I did not catch it.
Okay, well, it was about getting Cal Fire to give a presentation virtually about their Zone Haven system, which is the evacuation electronic thing they've been working on. And fire season is, going to be coming up pretty soon. So it'd be great if you could agendize that. I did leave a message for Barbara, and I gave her the name of, in fact, I sent it in the email to you too, the captain or chief, fire chief, John Cox, who actually was pushing Zone Haven when it
Well,
was in the works.
So it's not on the,
I've got that. I've just been really sick with strep throat and
Oh,
I've
I'm
not
sorry.
been able to, no, it's fine. I haven't been able to follow up with anybody, but I was going to talk to Len about making that an agenda item
Okay.
in the
goody.
future. Okay.
Well, I mean, before fire season, we better than not.
I got it, but I just,
And he might be busy.
okay. Sid, I
Yeah.
think Barbara said she's heard it and she's taken the
Good.
initiative
No
there.
problem. I just
Okay.
wanted to know if you got my email and if you were going to put it in the,
I-
you know,
I think we
list.
have the answer from Barbara then, so we will
Yeah.
follow up. Thank you. Okay, I think that's it then. Now we will move to the consent agenda where there is, right?
Len, there's no other public comments?
It was open, nobody else had raised their hand.
I'm seeing Julie Mel waving her hand.
Hi, Dave Olson. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Just in time. Hi, Carrie. It's nice to put faces to all the names of the people I've been trying to reach out to. My name is Julie Mel. I'm a Montero resident. I've started a company for an event, really, to get the Coastsiders outside. I know you're all busy with pandemic, but film and movies are my passion, and I think that the county needs to, the community needs to get out of the house. And I'm trying really hard to talk to all the right people and get the right information so I can proceed with my project. I'm calling it An Evening Under the Stars. We're beach break entertainment. But I can't seem to get an answer about the plot of land I want to use. I did turn in my event coordinator report. And I was told by Bob Nesbitt that I should talk to Joe Leclerc. Everyone's told me I should talk to Joe Leclerc. Everybody is behind this in the community. People love the idea. It's COVID safe. It will be well staffed with volunteers. It's going to give back to the community. I have nonprofits involved. I've asked small businesses to give coupons so that we get foot traffic into their businesses. And I have sponsors. I just don't have a location. And I'm trying to get the information, and I've chatted with Carrie a couple times about a couple different locations. I need to turn that off.
So, excuse me, Carrie? Carrie, have you been in touch on this item?
Yes. I've done some research looking into specifics about different locations and gotten Julie in touch with like one property owner. And I've also asked some of my colleagues as well as Supervisor Horsley if they had any additional ideas for potential spaces that could be used for an event of this nature.
So I can just add really quickly, Carrie, you've been terrific and you do respond. What I'm trying to do is get details about the land that's outside of the Harbor Village parking lot. It's a dirt lot. It's between the highway and the parking lot, as well as the lot below Johnston House. Those two locations, for me, ideally, it would be more centralized coast, especially since I'm a Montero resident. I'd rather the north end have the accessibility, but even Keat I've spoken to him. He loves the idea, but he said there's a problem with the lot, and I don't know if that means we just can't use it and I should move on. Or if it means that there's a problem, but nobody's telling me what the problem is or how that parcel is deemed. I guess that may be the question at hand.
Okay. Okay.
You
This,
all.
this is an item off the agenda. We will try to do follow-up. So you're saying that the land that is between Oceana Hotel and the Highway 1?
Correct. It's just a little
Yes.
plot of land. It's got the fence around it for Harbor Village shopping. And it's Capistrano, Highway 1 in Capistrano.
Yeah,
That's where they want the RV park?
yeah, that's the one that's scheduled to become or the plans are in for it to become an RV park. Julie and I have talked a little bit, so I'll volunteer to be the council point on this unless somebody else wants to do it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So then you've got both Carrie, but Dave will take initiative there to work with you.
Can I add, just so everybody knows that
Just hold it, Dan.
property
Dan,
was used
Dan?
for overflow parking for the last triathlon.
Oh, so
Yeah.
people do park on it because a drive-in movie is not a long event. It's an in and a sit and an out. So I just don't know what the problem is. But I do have a date in mind. I'm really aiming for August 6th. I just have to get approval and then pay whoever I need to pay, whatever. Well,
Okay.
not whatever they want, but
Well, Dave
Julie?
is good at this and he will help you figure it out. I do want to say that this comes up all the time, not so much about outdoor locations, but we really need a place on the Midcoast where people can gather. It is a major problem that we don't have one. So good luck. I hope Dave will help you.
and it will be very COVID safe. I guarantee no one gets out of their car unless they have to use the restroom. So I have
Okay.
plans out. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Okay, thank
Thank
you. Okay,
And we
next,
have 3 more people now. Yeah.
I see them. So Sid Young again.
There we go. Okay, well, this segues into what I was going to mention, and that is that the Midcoast does not have a community center. And I've been, going on these Zoom meetings a lot for the Board of Supervisors. And if I don't have time, I at least read their agendas. And they just give out buckets of money of Measure K funding to whoever asked for it. I think on the most recent one, they gave it to Foster City for a canine thing. And they've given it to Daly City to upgrade their community center. So I'm just thinking and I'm not alone in this, that we should really try to get together and get a community center. And then Claire would be able to, we could all have meetings there instead of you guys having to, once COVID goes away, have it at a sanitary district office. And, there's so many things we could do. We could have, sports fields or something, tennis courts, basketball courts, a soccer field, but there is nobody's spearheading it. And I guess the county just treats us like, go away, little people, we'll just take your property tax and give it out to everybody else. So my thought was, there is that Caltrans right away. It's in the back of Montera. It's under the control of the county, I understand. And there's plenty of land there. So I don't know if that would be a good spot for a future community center, but anybody that want to work with me on it, I'm happy to do it because I'm going to keep talking about this. They're not going to make me go away. I'm pretty persistent. That's it. And then let me see if there was one other thing I was going to ask. No, I don't, whatever it was. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid. Next up is Dolores. Dolores Silva.
Hello. Yes, after so many of these Zoom meetings, I think that it would be nice if, or actually it's needed, for the county to clarify what is enough public input, or that is, like, some meetings allow you to see how many participants they are and even who they are. And you get to hear what everybody gets to say. Other meetings you don't. And generally speaking, my experience with Zoom has been that the host controls that. The normal thing is for you to be able to see who the participants are, but they disengage that for whatever reason. And that is, that's rather limiting what we actually get to learn or see or even understand how far to go with some of our comments, because the public contribution is not public enough. And I haven't found any kind of documented ideas on like what constitutes public input. And it would be nice to know that, because it's very, I know that in the last minutes I complained that the last Connect the Coastside big session had gotten even worse, because you couldn't even see how many participants there were, or you couldn't see the chat box anymore. I mean, why do they do that? It's bad enough that it's all virtual, but when they don't let us see what's happening, that's really, I think, disservice to the community.
So the MCC has always viewed this as something of a community town hall. So I assume you're happy with the way the MCC meeting is run?
Yes, I think this is fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know, so if my question should be to Carrie, or just how do you feel? I mean, how does the MCC feel about these meetings? And are you satisfied with some of these other venues?
Well, this is for comments not on the agenda, and we really can't go into the discussion now, but Carrie, if you're around still, then can you ask this question at the county level to find out if there's any standardization on what Dolores is raising?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And the only comment I would have as far as the format of the online meetings, I know with Zoom specifically, in my experience, the different functions that participants see is just based on whether the meeting is set up as more of a group meeting or more of a webinar kind of lecture style meeting. So there are many different things you can change in the settings, but I do appreciate that feedback, and I'll definitely bring the question back.
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
Okay, thanks, Dolores. Are there any other comments here? I do not see any more. So, and we've had one announcement. Does anyone else have an announcement? Okay, then we're going to move to the consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda, the minutes for the July 8th meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the minutes of July 8th.
Seconds of somebody?
I think Barbara's trying to second it, but she's
I'll
muted.
second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Claire, could you call the roll?
Len,
Yes?
Dan,
I'm going to abstain. I'm sorry. I did not have time to review it.
okay. Barbara,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
I vote yes, so it's 6-0-1.
That'll
No,
be
5-0-1.
Great. Thank you, Claire.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. The first item was the treasurer's report. I think there was a misconnect on this, so I think we're going to have to postpone that a week. Is that correct, Barbara? My concern.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll probably
I move we table this item then.
Okay. Table
Second.
for the next meeting. Okay. Next is the Cypress Point update. And Dave was going-
Len,
Yes, Barbara.
since we have a meeting on the 29th, could we put this on the 29th? Or, I mean, it's a 2-minute thing instead of
Understand.
waiting for 2 more weeks.
Dave, can that be added to a special agenda item?
It could, but I'd rather keep the study session a pure study session if at all possible.
Okay, because I'm thinking I might not be at that meeting, so, okay, all right, that's fine.
Okay,
One of us can present it for you, Barbara. Sounds like that, unless you don't think you need to explain it.
okay. Okay, the next item is a Cypress Point update. We were going to get that from Dave.
Okay, I'll start off by saying that there was also a very good article in the Half Moon Bay Review about this issue. It was delayed by earlier items on COVID and the like running late, so it started at 11:45. Started with Steve Monowitz summarizing the history of PUD 124 and including why the LCP amendments going in prior to the CDP and the development application. He also summarized the recent changes to maximum height and setback, which the MCC and others had requested and which were put into the ordinance. They are not part of the amendment. He said there's no need for CEQA for the LCP amendment because the CCC staff will do environmental review. Steve said that after the amendment is accepted and possibly before possibly after any Coastal Commission staff changes, Mid-Penn can then start the application for development permit, including a CEQA process. Andrew Bielek from Mid-Penn Housing gave a 15-minute presentation on the site history, the planning process to date, public meetings, and revisions to their plans following that, and showed early renderings highlighting the open space, the coloring, and the distances from the streets. This will be the first income restricted housing in the Midcoast, not the first Mid-Penn housing project, but the first income restricted. And Andrew highlighted that many of the 1,600 jobs in the Midcoast are low pay. 62% of them are less than $42,000 a year. He also highlighted the fact that the live-work preference is now up to 75%. He addressed some of the questions raised about infrastructure, water and sewer, that they were all dedicated and adequate. He talked about traffic and mobility issues and possible mitigations, including Mid-Penn Housing paying their fair share of intersection control, as well as improving the pedestrian and bicycle access in the areas around the site. He showed a timeline with the CDP hearing sometime in 2021. That would be the CDP hearing after the application development goes in. And then the Board of Supervisors receiving permits and establishing the funding in 2022, with construction possibly starting in 2022 or possibly later, depending on when everything's approved. Following that, there were a number of public comments, many of them raising issues of concern. I did not hear any that had not already been raised during MCC meetings, so I'm not going to summarize those. There were also a number of people speaking in support from various agencies as well as private citizens. For those who hadn't heard, Supervisor Horsley mentioned that he used to live on Sierra Street, right next to the site, which I hadn't heard before. For those who didn't read the amendment and the ordinance change, the entire content of the LCP amendment is to drop the 21% and 14% affordable housing units of various types and replace it with 100% of the total units, with the exception of the manager's apartment, are reserved for low-income houses. The zoning ordinance is more extensive. It's 7 pages. It creates a new PUD 140. It starts with all development shall substantially conform to the plans presented to the San Mateo County Planning Commission on January 22nd, 2020, and then goes on to discuss exceptions to that. It discusses the grading. It mentions 18 two-story residential buildings to be completely affordable housing, again, except the manager's apartment. A community building, 142 parking spaces, a driveway entrance from Carlos, and construction of sidewalks and pathways for access both within the site and to the site, and all new utilities to be installed underground. Total number of dwelling units not to exceed 71 units, maximum building height to be 28 feet measured as the vertical distance from any point on the finished grade to the topmost point of the building immediately above, which is what the MCC have been requesting. And the ordinance will not take effect until later of 30 days after certification of the LCP amendment by the Coastal Commission and after the county accepts any modifications required as a condition of certification. And finally, the zoning change and LCP amendment were both adopted unanimously, a 5-0 vote. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. While we aren't here to further discuss the Cypress Point project, people may have comments on the process that was just completed. I see I have one hand up from Sid Young. But first, before I do, any questions from council members or comments? None. Okay, Sid?
Hi, Dave, I had one question. It didn't come up. I listened to the whole Board of Supervisors meeting, especially the part about Mid-Penn, and I read the package. It was like 733 pages. And in there, it does say that they want to do it all in one phase, but the LCP says that they can't exceed, I think, 44 units, not 71, but they want to build it all in one phase. And it wasn't covered in their, what do you call it? Not proclamation, but the thing they approved to send on to the Coastal Commission. So do you happen to know if they're just going to forget about trying to build it all at once?
There are no changes in that area in the LCP amendment or in the PUD. They are allowed to ask for a density bonus of up to 50%, that is 60 total units, because it is affordable housing. They also can plead exceptional circumstances and ask to exceed that. It is up to the discretion of the Board of Supervisors. So
Not the Coastal Commission.
Not the Coastal Commission.
Okay.
It's strictly a county planning issue.
Is that it, Sid? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to lower my hand. Shoot.
Dolores Silva?
Yes, I do want to make a point. People seem to think that this is a done deal because this zoning change has been approved, but it's not. The CDP's got a long ways to go. And we have some serious concerns that have not been addressed. And even the MCC has some concerns that they only talk in this staff report about the things that they responded to for the MCC, but not the things that they didn't. And so we've got a long ways to go. I think it's unfortunate that well, maybe, I mean, I can hope, but it's unfortunate that so far the question about hazards, because they themselves found lead and we believe that there's asbestos, that nobody has taken that seriously enough to inquire. It would be a very simple thing to find out if the asbestos is there, but nothing has been looked at. And so there's a long ways to go. And we are still going to proceed. I think you all got a copy of our letter to the board that went out just yesterday. And we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. I would say on behalf of the MCC that we had, as you point out, a number of letters about the project. We're going to review the submission to try to determine what's still in play in the application versus many things which seem to have been deferred to the CDP. So I do expect we'll get back at the next regular meeting to bring that up. Okay, that's all for that item. So next up, we're going to really speak to connect the coast side in the remaining regular agenda items. And in doing this, I want to ask Dave if you could put up the slides that relate to the county's plan.
Yes, I will do that. As soon as I find them. Go. Okay. Sorry, that's the wrong one. Huh. Ah, there we go. Okay, yeah, that's it.
Okay. So is it, don't see it up yet. Is it on?
Is this on the website?
No, this is not. Really tried to bring this together for this meeting. If you go down to about slide 6 or 7, Dave.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me. That's the one you want?
Let's see. It's not being shared yet. Just have your picture.
Should be.
No, just, all I see is you.
Hmm.
You had it up before.
I haven't stopped sharing it. That's strange.
There we go. So it's started screen sharing. There we go. Okay. So if you would go back 2 slides. So one more forward. It's in. So the coast side, since we've had the virtual meetings that went through in May into early June, there was a sequence of activities planned that were heading for a conclusion in the late summer. If you go to the next slide, Dave, they've added additional discussions of various types here, and with a presentation plan to the Midcoast Council that was originally intended possibly for sometime in August, and that has pushed out. You can see now by the time we get to a workshop for the Planning Commission, we're into November. And the next slide. With a process that finally brings this to the Planning Commission and then on as a recommendation to the supervisors in February. Since this time, since we set up this an MCC study session, which is really intended to allow members of the community to speak to points they may have had during the virtual meetings, but wanted to elaborate or share with the total audience here, but also to give some special concern to Moss Beach. But in doing that, and then if you go to the next slide, Dave, they've really sort of evolved into a more stronger emphasis on the Moss Beach corridor. And consequently, for the July 29th special meeting session, primarily emphasized the Moss Beach corridor in a number of different ways to get comments there. I just want to give this as background because it is something of a moving target. But since a year ago, last March, when the MCC asked for a sit-down meeting between MCC members, Caltrans, and the county on the Moss Beach corridor. And roughly we define that as in the narrow sense between Cypress and California, and then extending out to the width of Moss Beach. There was active discussion there, at least begin to say, well, how do we get to specific projects that do things? And now they seem to be moving forward more actively there. So I expect that by the time we get to our session next Wednesday, there'll be a better definition of what they may want to consider under the Moss Beach corridor. So I just wanted to alert people to that point. And then the first item I was going to review is we've asked for coordination with the city of Half Moon Bay. So I've been in touch with the planning manager there. Her name is Jill Ekus, and is working on their LCP, which has a roadway component. And I think the effort is to get the two LCPs as far as the roadway, Highway 1 especially, or 92, to be in coordination. So some discussions are beginning there. A second point is in the roadways that come to Highway 1 or the province of DPW. We have a new DPW manager of roadways. His name is Claveau, and he's instituting an overall review of county roads. And I expect he'll come to us sometime in the next month or two to speak to that as far as the roadways. And I know especially in Moss Beach, we hear different concerns about it there. So these have some impact on roadways as well. And I think parties that will join in the discussion.
Excuse me, Mark, did this gentleman take over for Jim Porter?
No, he takes over for Joe Lococo.
Okay.
So Joe for years had the responsibility there, is well known on the coast, and he retired about 3 months ago, and Qua came in. He has, so I think that's quite informative, and that has an important role as we consider Highway 1 itself and the adjoining roads. Okay. So given that's the case, then I wanted to, first of all, just look at some of the items that are in play for the roadway. And in particular, I asked Dave to look at the delay index, vehicle miles traveled and level of service. So he found some resources on it. I don't know if you wanted to make any quick summary of that, Dave?
Yeah, I will. I'll do a summary of that. If you give me just 1 second here. All right, so I will put links to some of these documents up on the MCC website. Between Len and I, we've got a number of links and documents. We'll either put them all in a blog posting, or we'll create a document that has all the links in it, depending on what seems the easiest way for the community to consume it. Anyway, I wanted to start with VMT, that is vehicle miles traveled. Joe Leclerc addressed this somewhat last meeting or the meeting before. This is a consequence of a bill adopted by the state legislature and signed by the governor all the way back in 2013. And it changes the CEQA process for any project affecting state highways, that is road work on the highway, streets connecting to it, or developments that have to take traffic on state highways into account. So that change is effective July 1st, 2020. That is 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now. It is now required for CEQA for all state highway projects and development that affect state highways. LOS, that is level of service, can no longer be used for those projects. LOS can still be used for other projects, but not for state highway related projects. The primary goal of vehicle miles traveled was to move away from a congestion-based design criteria for road and intersection changes due to development, due to a method based on the overall regional effects of development on traffic. Primarily is to avoid the effects of induced demand, which I'll talk about in a minute, and that the effect of induced demand is that something we've all seen here on the coast and other places, and is now relatively well recognized in various transportation organizations, which is that if you improve the capacity of a roadway by adding lanes or increasing the speed limit or changing the way intersections feed into it, you very shortly thereafter expand the traffic to completely consume the new capacity, and often to even overconsume the new capacity, making things even worse. That's what led to some of our 10-lane highways, as you might see up in Fairfield. It's also intended to favor infill development rather than suburban sprawl, and to favor development near transportation alternatives. An early example of that was the condominium and apartment housing near San Antonio Road in Alma in Los Altos. There's a number of other projects like that, including some in Redwood City. So that bill was adopted in 2013. It was a 7-year horizon for it, and it is now in effect. Most notably, that means that Cypress Point will fall under the VMT rules, not the LOS rules. LOS, or level of service, has been used for decades, and it's focused on specific intersections and specific roadway segments rather than overall travel time and traffic effects. It also doesn't take alternative types of transportation into account, except in very slight ways in terms of bus traffic. It often has led to over-engineered intersections and roads, and as of July 1st, it can no longer be used for state highway-related projects. Delay index is a newer measurement and design tool, and it is used in Connect the Coast side. It can be used the same way LOS was, to consider individual intersections and roadway segments, but it can also be used to consider longer travel distances. And that's the way it's used in Connect the Coast side. It, for example, includes travel time from Montera all the way to Half Moon Bay, or travel from anywhere south through Montera and into Pacifica. It was brought into Connect the Coast side after the MCC complained about LOS and its limitations, and the county and its consultants brought in the delay index method. Delay index has been used in several other cities in the Bay Area. It's a very straightforward concept. It's not terribly straightforward to calculate, but it's based on a zero congestion travel time between any 2 points. So if you were driving somewhere with no accidents at 2 in the morning, that's your baseline number. It can be directly measured for peak travel times. For example, on our weekends, beautiful weekends, or commute hours, it's very easy to measure the effects of delay time as a vehicle travels from Half Moon Bay to Montera, or vice versa. You can also use the delay index as a calculation to determine effects from development, population growth, both inside an area and outside an area, visitor traffic for us. And that gets into traffic modeling. There's quite a few parameters that can be adjusted in that, and you have to state those parameters just as you did when you were dealing with level of service calculations. Importantly, as used in Connect the Coast side, the decision was made to adopt a criteria of a delay index of 2 as being acceptable. That is, if it takes 7 minutes to get from El Granada to Half Moon Bay with no delays, and then it takes 14 minutes at peak traffic, that's acceptable. In terms of connect the coast side. And that was a somewhat arbitrary, but not truly arbitrary decision. However, it goes further in connect the coast side, where the decision was made that if there are alternative travel modes, bicycling, walking, etc., then a delay index of 3 is chosen to be acceptable. And that's so that rather than putting all your funds into roadway improvements, you can also put them into pedestrian and bicycle improvements. That again is a parameter that was chosen. It's not something that's inherent in delay index. As Joe said, San Mateo County proposes to continue the use of delay index for traffic analysis and project determination in the unincorporated coast, but it will not be able to use it for CEQA when either Highway 1 or 92 is part of a project. Thus, it's only going to be used for guidance. Okay, so then you get into traffic models. There's many traffic models. There's very many, quite a few computer programs that you can use to model traffic. We've seen evidence of some of those for the roundabout projections, both by the MCC's consultant, Michael Walworth, and by the county's consultant, DKS, as well as the traffic consultant for Cypress Point. The county uses something called the Ccag VTA traffic model. And that is a traffic model developed by Santa Clara County's Valley Transportation Authority, but with parameters set to be acceptable to the cities in San Mateo County and the county itself. The model is not a public model, although you can request access to it. It's important to know that this model, as with any other model, the parameters used for making decisions do have to be published. And that ties somewhat into roundabouts too. So I'm going to leave it at that unless somebody has questions.
So before we open up to questions, I want to just bring up a couple of other items here. With respect to build out, as well as some of the functional issues being discussed, we received papers from the county as an update paper there. Lisa Ketchum has provided a document that both details particularly Moss Beach requirements of various types and speaks to the build out issue. And Green Foothills has provided a letter speaking for concern about build out from a couple of different perspectives. If you look at the report, the Connected Coastside draft, when you get to the term build out, which from the standpoint of the LCP was intended to reflect a true theoretical build out, the maximum, so that you could weigh that against other things happening and determine when you might be too close to impact, which requires you to have a model that makes some statements about what the performance would be in build out, be that a delay index or other things. I think in the report, they then began to talk about a build out that was tied to a lot of Bay Area highway plans, tied to the year 2040. And that continues to create confusion when people read it. So in discussions with Joe, and I think he's agreed, we've asked that when build out appears in the discussion, it reflects the maximum build out possible. And that other terms would identify something if you're talking about a horizon that's artificial and tied to different planning programs. And so I expect in later drafts, we'll see that. The documents I just mentioned will be posted on Monday, as Dave and I are working on a place to hold different documents, but encourage people to look at it to understand the build out arguments there. Another issue we brought up is both there is old roadway data in the reports. Many of them were active created in 2014, 2015, and with the delays, they're quite old. So, and that's during that time, the tunnel has come online and created impacts. And so we have concerns about that, furthermore, you can't just measure it right now because we have the COVID problem before us, and certainly traffic. We don't believe it's standard, so it's something to address. I would also say that with respect to delay index, there's now technology that let us measure that on almost a real-time basis to get a sense of, given any particular segment, what is the delay there. So that's a tool I'd like to see brought in. Questions on this area, that is the different features of the report and the tools being used. Are there any questions or comments from people here, whether those are things you might have wanted to talk about in the virtual meetings or other topics that you have that you'd like to bring forward? So this is an opportunity, if you'd like to speak to things that couldn't be said during the virtual meetings, to bring those up. So we have a couple of hands to start off. I'll go with Dan first.
Yes. Hey, Dave, thank you for reporting on that. I do have to say, I'm very surprised that, this is now the first we've heard of this. There's been so much discussion. There's been so many hours of community members investing, their own personal time on this, or specifically on traffic issues relating to the coast side. Yeah, I'm just surprised that this is now the first we've heard of this change. Has the county been aware for this time, or are we just finding?
Well, we know that Joe was a bit aware of it at either the last meeting or the meeting before. I forget where he brought it up. I suspect he was not particularly aware of it before then, simply because he never brought it up, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, well, I'll be frank. I'm a little bit skeptical about how this will play out to the benefit of the code. It's a concern of mine. I'd like to know, and I'm just I guess shocked, really, that we're just now hearing about this.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's pretty heavy. Do you agree, Dave?
Well,
I mean, there's going to be some heavy changes to how we look at this whole thing.
Well, I think what Dave mentioned and what I believe Joe's trying to say is the delay index for our particular roadway has real validity in the situation here. If you think of vehicle miles traveled from the Bay Area as a whole, what they're trying to do is reduce that as an aggregate number. So for example, Dan, if you drive to San Francisco every day, you might have 90 miles traveled for vehicles miles traveled, but that really is only a small portion of that here in the Midcoast, where we're concerned about the impact on State Route 1. So I think Joe remains very clear that the delay index provides value for us. And while it isn't necessarily part of a CEQA validation, it is an important element in terms of making decisions about the roadway. So I do think he's been aware and thought of it that way. And what he was indicating to us last week was that that's still an important tool from his perspective.
Okay, well, it's just it's a little bit confusing for people that have just now for the first time heard of this. Sounds like, Len, you're pretty knowledgeable already. Sounds like you know about it. Dave certainly knows about it. I'm just very concerned that the end result for our community, that we are not negatively affected by how they measure and what they decide to do.
Okay, thanks, Dan. We'll have to see.
Okay. I can address that a little bit. Len got it right. The delay index will still be used locally. It just can't be used as part of CEQA. And vehicle miles traveled is, as Len said, much more of a regional thing. It's not very useful for making decisions in small areas like the Midcoast.
Okay.
Len, you mentioned you were reaching out to Half Moon Bay. Have you thought about reaching out to the city of Pacifica as well? Because, of course, their residents will be affected by any changes in the Midcoast.
That's a good point. It turns out in the chartering of the CTMP and the framework, it really didn't go to Pacifica. And there seem to be background reasons why there's a gap there. So I'm not sure that we can rectify it this time around. As best I can tell you there.
Can you elaborate about the background you're talking about?
I just, you know, it wasn't, well, I think it's difficult for the county to work a bit with cities together with the county lands. And, you know, really, I can't, it's something that was baked in all the way back to 2012, 2013, which is when this was created. And at this point, there's no real way to change it as they're working on bringing this particular edition to a close. Now, I would say also in talking to Joe about this, that he differentiates between project work that's over the next 5 to 10 years, is where you're doing things that you have real expectations they'll come to pass, as opposed to things out past that, let's say out to 2040, where you're looking a bit down the road and it's maybe softer ideas or approaches. And then when you go beyond that, really, you know, broad ideas. And so I think, you know, he's an advocate of trying to look very specifically about what we want to do over the next 5 or the next 10 years, and that the process should be picked up again in 10 years, a quicker iteration there, if you will. Okay, thank you. JQ?
Yeah, first I had a question. Why wouldn't we measure vehicle miles traveled as well as delay index? Why not do both?
We do both. I mean,
okay, it sounded like Dave was saying we were only going to do the delay.
No. What we're saying is what the new regulation says. You can't put in a CEQA element that speaks to something other than vehicle miles traveled. But we can certainly speak to that, as well as give the rationale for using delay index as well. That's what we're trying to bring out.
Okay, good. I understand now. So the other thing was, I wanted to speak to some of the table that's in the draft Connect the Coast Side, the January draft. I sent you guys a spreadsheet, but it was late, so that was my bad. I didn't actually finish the spreadsheet until after the meeting started, so you may not have it to reference. But I just wanted to call attention to a couple of graphs that Joe Leclerc presented at the last meeting 2 weeks ago. And one was from his presentation, page 20, which showed the 2040 build-out conditions, and he had some values in there for both SR1 and SR92. It appears that those values came from what is table 16 in the Connect the Coast Side draft. And so I went to that table, and the values for that he had for not including recommended transportation projects seemed to jive okay for Highway 1. The values for Highway 92 are totally off. They're totally screwy. I don't know where he got those numbers. Anyway, when I recalculated the numbers and I looked at the segment analysis, which I asked him about at that last meeting, I had asked him, like, what if you parse those segments, like the First Street to Murata Road, into different sections? It turns out they did that. And when you look at that, you find out that the problem section is actually Capistrano to Murata. It's nowhere near Moss Beach. And it's probably due to that traffic light at Coronado Street. And anybody who's around the coast side for a long time can remember, before we had that traffic light, we didn't have those significant delays that we have all the time now. It was hard to get out onto the highway, obviously, and that's why we put it there. But anyway, the thing I'd like to suggest, based on that data, assuming that data is good, is that maybe we do an intersection control evaluation at Highway 1 and Coronado Street to see if perhaps we want to put a roundabout there. And it would also provide a safe crossing at that location for surfers and people going to the trail and so forth.
Okay, that's a good point. And actually, one of the things I want to say in stating at the beginning of this, that we're trying to, in the study session next week, focus very explicitly on Moss Beach, which isn't to cut the other areas short. It's just that you really need to really understand it, spend a detailed time there. Especially in the case of El Granada, I think between the fire station that's just gone in, as well as proposals from the Granada Community Services District for a park next to Highway 1, that will become part of a major discussion there, and dive into that as well at that point.
Yeah, well, the reason I bring that up is that Joe Leclerc seemed to be using this data where he said that the delay index had gone above 2. He seemed to be making this argument for that whole segment that actually supports the roundabouts at Cypress Avenue and California Avenue, which they do not. And that's the point I wanted to make.
Okay. Yeah, and the other response I wanted to make there is that we have highlighted for him, and that's in one of the documents I mentioned we'll post, the concern that you, two things. One, you'd really need to have multiple segments that you look at. There's both an overall segment, for example, all the way from just coming out of the tunnel, if you will, down to Highway 1 and 92, and then different segments in there. And he's kept it at a very large level. It's also a point where collaboration with Half Moon Bay is important, because what we really care about is not how quickly we can get to the border of Half Moon Bay and the unincorporated area, but all the way to 92 are segments in there. And that's where I feel that they're trying to capitalize on real GPS type data that is available to look at segments. You can do a much better analysis. So we brought that up, and I'll probably ask him to speak to that further.
But you said these measurements will be redone then too?
What's that?
Those measurements will all be redone, is what you were also saying, or that Dave was saying?
Well, now there's measurement, the data they have, I think some of it's out of date, and I'm not sure within the time frame they have what to do. So especially with regard to delay index, I would want to see them talk about more differentiated segments, and to remove the hard boundary that's at the boundary with Half Moon Bay. So we will, if you look at the extent of the revision cycle in those first slides I showed, certainly it's being highlighted to him. And so I expect him to come back to talk about what he's able to do within this report revision cycle.
Excuse me, Len, I'd like to add something I think is of concern to JQ.
Yeah.
Response.
Well, okay. I'm trying to get
Oh, just take a second.
Go ahead.
And regarding the intersection, Coronado and Highway 1, I've actually stood by the intersection and have witnessed at pretty much peak weekend, peak use, the traffic light cycles a minute 30 green for Highway 1, 30 seconds for cars coming out of Coronado, a minute 30, 30 seconds, a minute 30, 30 seconds. That's pretty much the cycle. Now, it does cause the backup, and everybody knows about the Waze app. So you get a lot of people that go around bypass. And so now you've got a lot of added traffic on that 30-second cycle for left turns. Now, of course, the pedestrians are using it to cross Highway 1 during those 30 seconds that Highway 1 is red. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Claire, you have a comment, question?
Two things. One, Dave, Len, could you possibly poll everybody on the council and just, go like down the table and let us all have a turn with this? And I mean, it sounds like you've done obviously a huge amount of work, and some of it's still outstanding, like not finished. You're still trying to get more information from people, but these documents that you want us to look at, they're very dense and they're very long, and I might have access to some of them myself, but I would really like to see everybody have access to them as soon as possible, because it's going to take a lot of study. And if we get them on Monday night and we have a meeting on Wednesday night, it's not enough time.
I appreciate that.
I will say that most of the documents I'm going to list are summary documents. I'm figuring nobody could possibly read the full documents in time.
The more information we can get, the sooner the better.
I agree. And certainly we've looked at it, so we certainly would have some things up by Friday.
And that should all be available on the website to the community as well, correct?
Oh, that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
I'm just disappointed that it's on the agenda tonight and we don't have anything to look at, nothing to study. And I don't understand that.
Well, both reaching out to get this information, as well as trying to adjust to what I perceived was a a stronger emphasis to give attention to Moss Beach has consumed some time there. I mean, I did not at all have it where I wanted for this meeting. That's one of the reasons why we dropped the 15th meeting and really trying to put the emphasis on the meeting on the 29th. But that certainly requires to have things posted by Friday at the earliest.
Right.
I'm looking.
Most of these documents are for the study session, not for tonight's meeting.
But
Okay.
we're talking about things that have to do with the study session. We're kind of doing a sneak preview of it, and we don't know where
Exactly.
it's coming from with that.
Right. Yeah, it just would have been nice, that's all.
I
To
agree.
feel part of the group.
I agree.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Sid, thank you. Sid Young.
I guess the study session is not just an MCC leadership thing, it's for the whole community.
It's especially for the community. What we're interested in is, many people said after the virtual meetings, there are things they wanted to bring up or explore further. I was hoping in this meeting, if there was any topic that came up during the virtual meetings where you wanted to see it aired further, to at least identify it, not necessarily to discuss it in detail here, but to bring it up as something we could look at in the study session.
So
people should
are
feel free
we
to do that.
talking, I'm sorry, are we talking about when Greg, I forget how he says his last name, DeGuez or DeGuez, was saying that the Connect the Coast Side virtual, breakout sessions were inadequate, and they didn't ask some of the questions that we would have liked to have bring up. Is this in response to that we're going to have better questions and better, input from the community?
Well, this is an open meeting with everyone in attendance at the session. We're looking to identify things that people here felt they would like to see discussed further, just by highlighting it in our meeting today. If you'd like to know more about either what we put up here for some of the points, and in about 5 or 10 minutes, we'll transition down to Moss Beach in particular. But if there's things you want to know more about or things should be discussed further, this is the time to bring it up.
Oh, I thought you were saying it's going to be the 29th when we bring it up.
No, it's what you'd like to see discussed, not to do the discussion now necessarily.
Right.
Particularly
Okay.
so
Well,
we can
I might
have material that would help you on the 29th.
Okay. Well, was there a PowerPoint presentation for tonight that couldn't be loaded? Is that the deal?
No,
Okay.
it's just outlines for Dave and I to work from on topics to
see.
cover.
Okay. Well, what I'll do, since I probably do have a few questions that I guess you're going to pass this up the channel to Connect the Coast Side people or the county?
No, this is going into our meeting next Wednesday. After that, we'll determine where to go next.
Okay.
So if you have them, bring it up now. Just.
Well, I guess what I felt, and Greg, I think, brought it up more at the last meeting, was that the Connect the Coast Side was more of a divide and conquer, break you out into chat rooms, and then they have a scribe who doesn't even live on the coast take notes. So I feel like there's really a much better wait a minute, Len. There's a better opportunity for us to give our impressions and dialogue when the county's not massaging it. That's my thought. Is that what this is going to be about?
No, well, that was the process you're speaking about, where there's some particular points you would like to see discussed further, the particular points.
Well, I can email it to you, but I guess you don't check your MCC email that I sent you yesterday. So where would you like me to email you if I think of any more
points? You should email it to me there. I won't go into why I've had trouble keeping up with it, but I will do better.
No, I can send it to you direct if you'd like.
So Sid, it would be better if you bring it up at the meeting on the 29th. What we're asking everybody to do tonight is, if there is something, and it will be a single meeting, not a breakout, it's driven by the MCC, not the county. The county will probably observe it, and we will send something to the county afterward. But what we're asking is, if there are particular topics that anybody in the community wants to cover that has not been covered yet, so we may not have information about it, let us know so we can get the information for the meeting on the 29th.
Okay, do you want something now, right this minute?
Yes.
Okay, they're talking forever. I mean, I don't remember how many damn meetings I went to, and they always were, you know, kicking the can down the road, but they could just put in the middle of Moss Beach a middle lane the way they have in Montera. So when you pull out onto the highway, you have a place to rest until you can get up to speed. And my specific thing is, you know, trying to turn north out of Cypress, there's no acceleration lane. So if they would just remodel it until they're ready to get the funds together. I know that's the main thing I had with Joe Leclerc is he said they didn't have any funding yet for Connect the Coast Side. So it just sounds like it's years away still. So they could redo that quickly and we wouldn't have as much issues getting in and off and on the highway from all the different intersections if they had a little middle holding lane. That's it. The other thing, one other thing is Montera has like 7 different lights along the highway. We have 1. So those are my 2 issues. If you want to bring it up next week or put it on the agenda for everybody to put their input on.
Are you talking about night lights?
Highway street lights that are on the highway. There's some on Carlos, and even turning into Cypress, there's one about maybe halfway, 1 house length in on Cypress. But when you're coming along late at night, you can't, unless the Moss Beach Distillery light is on their sign, you can't even see that intersection. It's very dark, and we don't have any highway lighting, and they're going to need it once they put in Cypress Point, if they put it in, because there'll be a lot more traffic using that part of the road. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Greg DeGeese. Oh, I'm sorry. Before you go, Greg, just a minute. I told the council, and this is my mistake. Claire has spoken, but we're going to go through the rest of the council members to give them a chance. And I'll go first to Michelle Weil.
Hi, I don't have any comments. Thank you, Dave and Len, for that presentation. I'm looking forward to the study session next week.
Okay. Barbara?
What item are we on? Are we on C, D, or E? There's 3 Connect the Coast Side items on the agenda. Which one are we?
We're on number D, where we've talked about different pieces of information.
Well, that one doesn't mention the study session at all. That one strictly talks about these models and build outs and traffic data. So I would have liked to have seen that. That's all I have to say. I just would have liked to have seen it other than just this sentence on the agenda, because it sounded like you wanted to talk about the study session. So I was confused as to where we were.
So would you like to hear more about that at the study session? You'd like to see the information in advance, but
yeah, I'd like to see the thing that you mentioned from Lisa that you talked about that you had. I haven't seen that. You know, you're quoting things, telling us about things that we don't understand. So I would like just to, like Dan has often asked, a little bit more transparency. It seems like just you and Dave know it all, and the rest of us don't know anything. And so we're, instead of being able to be part of, well, I don't think it's funny, Len. I'm sorry you do, but I don't think it's funny. I just don't understand why we're being left out of this. And I just don't get it.
Okay.
So Barbara, from my perspective, and I apologize that you feel like you're being left out, I was asked to present some information, and that's what I did. I wasn't viewing it as a presentation for everybody to look at. I'm just presenting information. Sorry if that feels like people are left out. I apologize.
Okay. No, myself too. I mean, trying to bring it together to have a good session took more time than I was able to put in.
I totally get it, and I appreciate it, and I understand that this is kind of your baby, the Connect the Coast Side thing, but it's on every agenda, and now it's on there 3 times. and it's so much to keep up with, and it, you know, it's just only right that we all get to see the same stuff, hopefully as soon as possible.
Okay,
That's all I have to say.
take that to heart. Thank you. Let's see, Dan, you've had good chance to talk, so.
Oh, whoa.
No,
You're gonna brush over me, Len? Come on.
no. There's other people who wanted to speak for the first time in the audience. You've had
No.
several
We're
talks first.
talking about the council members.
Yeah, and I think,
Council member, you just went through and you did not allow me to speak on item D.
go for it.
Thank you. So as far as ideas for discussion for the next meeting, yeah, I think I agree with a lot of the community in regards to, you know, there were serious issues with the breakout sessions. So I think we should be talking about that. Specifically that, you know, my comments were not, my specific comments were not shared publicly. I was not allowed to hear other members in the community's specific, you know, verbatim comments. It's true that there was scant publication of the whole Connect the Coast Side process. So a large portion of the community, people that, hey, there's no denying that traffic is one of the top issues on the coast side. Yet we're going through this process and there's a lot of people very interested that just were never notified. So those are some ideas that we should be talking about.
Well, I think in response to the ideas, we've talked about conducting the meeting as a large meeting with involvement of everybody. And I think it was recognized when we talked about this last week that people had the concerns you mentioned. But thanks for highlighting them again, and it's a bar we're trying to reach to do that more effectively. I think I've gone through all the council members. I want.
Excuse me. Are we criticizing? Is this meeting that we're going to have? Can I kind of review and our concerns of the whole process, or are we inviting new ideas from the community that may have just been left out completely?
Well, you talked about having things you brought up that weren't brought out to be discussed. And so identifying those in particular, the ones you felt were most important that didn't come forward, would be a good thing to highlight now. Be a helpful thing.
Right. And then, you know, I imagine that during the meeting, we're going to have time to talk about other things that may have never been discussed.
That's right.
Okay.
But do you have anything in particular from the meetings you wish to have discussed and did not? Would you like to mention now?
Yeah, just quickly that, you know, everybody's heard this, that you know, my concern about really looking closely at pedestrian underpasses as an investment, tax dollar investment that would actually improve the flow of the highway. And you know, citing, you know, my example of Coronado, you know, the backup is pretty much caused by, you know, a lot by pedestrians and these bypassing Waze app bypassers.
And then that was reported out of a virtual meeting, so I think it did get coverage. Okay, good enough. I do want to go ahead. Greg DeGeese, do you still want to talk?
Yeah, Len, it's Diegas. I want to just tick off some things that maybe you already have on your list, but I just want to be sure. And I'll go from the small to the large. With Cypress Point potentially coming in, there's that strong concern about people walking to schools. There was also some talk about biking through the back of Montera, and I had a couple of national rank bikers look into this, and they thought the diagram proposed by Connect the Coastside was madness. Nobody would ever follow it, and it was going to be unsafe. We have some unpaved roads. I'm not even sure if they're county roads. I know Harold and JQ could speak to this maybe, but the idea of traffic within Moss Beach, I hope is going to be covered. There was the issue of the exit on Carlos Street being unsafe and potentially hindering traffic depending on how it's done. I seem to recall there was a thought at one point of a roundabout close to Montera. That didn't make any sense to me, so I hope I'm wrong about that, but if you wouldn't mind listing it. But I think the high level point is that we need to come out of that meeting with our, what do you want to call it, recommendation? And I think Lisa's document is kind of a good start at a catch-all that we should distill down to, this is what we think makes sense. And, you know, if we have to phase it, sure. To Sid's point, it does seem pretty simple to just add a turn lane in Moss Beach. So I would hope the goal is to come out with something like what Lisa did, augment it as we see fit, and then prioritize. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Next is, I'm going to go to Dolores Silva first.
You know, one thing that I found in those breakout sessions is that most people didn't really understand the scope of CTC. Like now it includes the highway and Carlos, I guess, because of the coastal trail. But are other streets included? Are other side streets included? Because there was a lot of talk in my session about other streets on the east side of the highway that I didn't think were part of Connect the Coastside. So people are confused about what the scope is.
I appreciate that question. I think it's a very good one. That's one of the reasons we reached out to Quavo, the general manager for DPW on roads. And I expect he'll be both aware of the conversation and speak to us about it. Most specifically, the Connect the Coastside really doesn't go much further inland on the east side than Carlos as the parallel trail. Beyond that, you're into surface roadways that are more the province of DPW.
And the same on the west other than Airport Street.
Okay, so I don't think people understood that. There was a lot of time spent in these sessions about other roads that weren't even covered.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll try and summarize that issue at the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Dolores?
No, that's it for now.
Okay. Sid Young.
Hi, I did have one comment for back when you guys were talking about Dave's presentation, and definitely for somebody just in the audience, even, you know, obviously it would have been beneficial for all the MCC people to have seen it in advance and just be able to discuss it. But I found it, no offense, Dave, really hard to follow when you're just reading it off your screen to us as the audience. So I do hope you're going to post it at some point so we can all take a look at it and maybe have a little bit better chance to absorb it. And then the other thing is
just reading, by the way.
What?
I had some, that was not reading. I had some notes to go by, but I wasn't.
Oh, okay. Well, it looked like you were reading off a screen and I thought, oh, I guess his PowerPoint never launched. Anyway, I just couldn't really follow it because it's hard for me to just hear everything while, you know, a person is talking. I didn't absorb it as well as if I could read it at my own pace on a screen. Anyway, back to the Connect the Coastside thing that somebody was just saying that it only has to do with intersections along Highway 1, but Joe Leclerc made a big thing on that May 29th, I think it was May 29th, PowerPoint presentation about the Shara that's going to come up out of Carlos and Sierra Street and go up several blocks on Sierra down to California Avenue, and for to encourage bicyclists and pedestrians. But I looked, and those parts of Sierra are completely not county maintained. I even have a photo of the sign that says not county End County Road, right there at the corner, kind of near where the fire station is. And so I think he must have just thrown that in there because they don't want to have to build an extra parking lot. He was talking about a park and ride too. They know they're going to have way too many cars for the amount of parking they're providing in that complex. Anybody that wants to take a look, just do a Google map view from satellite view of the Moonridge apartments, and you can see how many cars are parked out beyond the boundaries. And I personally don't live over there, but I would sure as hell be pissed off if all of a sudden my street became a parking lot for Midpen. So I think the whole reason that they tried to bring up this, maybe he just did it from his desk in Redwood City and never even knew that that's not even a county maintained road. Or maybe they're going to try to make the Midpen people pay to pave 3 blocks of Sierra. But when I was on the meeting as Board of Supervisors, the one guy who lives on Sierra said he didn't want them to pave it, that he likes to be able just to walk out there and let his kids play. And they don't want to make it a major thoroughfare, but I think that's what they're aiming for eventually, because they don't want to have to make improvements to the Highway 1 and Carlos intersection that's deficient as far as letting all those people come and go from just that one spot. But that's my personal opinion. I don't know. It seems like they suddenly threw in a lot of improvements that were cherries on the top of the cupcake for Midpen that really don't have to do
Sid, that's
with
all about Cypress Point, nothing about Connect the Coast Side.
I know, but it did
They got
seem,
confused. I
I'm
know.
sorry, but he put it into Connect the Coast Side. He was giving his presentation about Connect the Coast Side. Go back and watch the video. I've watched it 3 times.
I know,
So,
it was confusing.
okay. I'm just saying, even Don Horsley brought it up in the meeting that he thought they should try to make the entrance down near 16th and Carlos and maybe connect those 2 streets. So anyway, that's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Sid.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else wish to make any comments here? Okay. When we move to the Moss Beach corridor, I just want to bring up to everyone that the issue that will be confronted most directly, not that we will resolve it, but we will explore a certain amount in the meeting, is that you have the 2 intersections, and I'll refer to them as Cypress and California. I know it's certainly the case that there could be alternatives to California, but if you think at intersections at either end, that for many of the things the community wants, safe crossings, some reduction of speed there, the way that we decide to treat the intersections will drive what can be done. And these are mutually exclusive approaches. So you have stoplights, which is what we have now. You have signals and you have roundabouts. And there's diverse opinions there. And basically, we can only take one path forward of those. So I think as we discussed it, certainly the council has for some time spoken very positively about roundabouts. And I think
Not the
that's
complete council.
No, I understand. But what I'm saying is, in approaching it, everybody needs to both listen on all sides, myself included, to recognize that if we don't have a sense of a decision that, for example, if we go 50-50, then basically we're asking somebody else to make the decision for us, or to just come back in another few years to do it. But basically, and we talked about having an acceleration lane. You don't have an acceleration lane necessarily if you've put a signal in or a roundabout. So it's part of the discussion that will be brought up next week, not to resolve it. And in fact, that's going to be a continuing topic of other study sessions that'll occur. But I guess I tell both myself, let's say, as one who's talked about roundabouts, or Dan, who has talked about signals, let's say, to listen hard on both sides and try to both appreciate good advocacy, and then to see how can we learn from the experiences elsewhere and from information out there to help us with a decision.
Len, has Joe Leclerc gotten back to you as far as really what it's pretty obvious to me?
What's that?
That, before we start to really trouble the community, let's put the data in there, have it peer reviewed, have everybody bless that it's actually accurate data, and have it completely transparent, and have a Vism software model of roundabouts versus traffic lights. Very simple. What we're doing by not doing what I'm asking first is we're pretty much wearing out the community. Just tiring the community. And you're dividing the community because nobody knows the pros and cons. Few people know the pros and cons and the impacts of either option. They're both on the table, but you're just not really informing the community. The best way to do that is through the Vism software. Joe Leclerc has already acknowledged that he values it. He said that he's going to work towards that. What has your last communications with Joe Leclerc regarding presenting to the community Vism software, a model, roundabouts versus traffic lights?
I haven't had that discussion. He hasn't come back with me with a particular. But in terms of both identifying software such as that and how to use that, or look at other places in the state that have implemented either signals or roundabouts in similar situations, is an informative thing to do as well.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. We have to spend our time on our situation, our data, our highway, our intersections, not somebody else that does other areas that is just not the same as ours. We want to know which is the best option. The community wants to know that.
Okay, the bottom line is you can look at a simulation, but that's not necessarily giving the answer the way you want it. But we are looking for people to come on and help us sort through that. So
we should have more conversation, more discussion on solving that issue first before we wear out the community another 6 months, dragging out all these meetings and starting to divide. You got the roundabout, team over here, and it's traffic light team over here. Everybody's divided and fighting, and just nobody understands. Just let's put the information out there so that the community can easily decipher and understand the pros and cons of both options.
Well, we posted a lot of information to read about it, and we'll try to do better in terms of what you're bringing up with a fuller picture on how to approach it.
And unfortunately, we've had quite a bit of community requests for a single meeting format that the county was not willing to do, and therefore we are providing that single meeting format. We have no funds to do the simulation. The county has funding sources, but has not committed to doing it. And I don't think we can delay until the county makes a decision one way or the other on that to have our full community meeting.
Well, one thing could come out of the community meeting is that we come out united, demanding that we are given a easy way to understand the options of both, the pros and cons and the impacts of both options.
Okay, Dan, I've heard your point. Anything else people would like to bring up today? Okay, so we shall assemble information for next week. Take a number of the comments here to heart. We will get all the documents that have been referenced here tonight out to everybody tomorrow at the very least in emails, but basically get it posted on a site within our own website. So if there's no further comments here, I think, it's a difficult door to open. And I think, we've gotten some things on the table. I know Michelle Dragoni, is she still here? Has referenced the Montero meeting, which had 50 people in an extended discussion. I think ours is more complex and more facets, but as I said, if you look at the the roadmap, even the planning's tried to draw out, there's many other study sessions or meetings to look at it as well. So we will endeavor to bring that forward next Wednesday. Any other comments on this?
Yes, in regards to what has been proposed, at least one park and ride. I think they were talking about that empty area between was it just south of Etheldor, or very near Etheldor. I know that Joe Leclerc proposed a park and ride in that area. So if that was developed, it's obvious that you're going to have a lot of cars driving in one direction, parking there, and then they're going to have to make left turns, right? So I think that we need to really look at left turns going back to where they came from, right? So let's say they drive from the north, park, and when they go back south, they'll need a cross. So we're introducing a number of more conflicts on the highway. So I'd like to.
So Dan, the particular thing that you're talking about is to look at the parking, especially park and rides.
Yes, but specifically safe areas to make a, Leonard Warren used to call them Michigan left turns. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of, some people call them coast side left turns, where, you want to make a left turn, but it's obviously unsafe. So you decide, okay, it's a safer option to make a right turn and then a left turn, you're somewhere coming around. So you're only crossing one lane of traffic at a time. I think we need to talk about that as a coast side. We need to talk about options to make that safer.
And that's exactly the kind of thing everybody should bring up at next week's study session.
Okay. Well, I will be sure to do that.
Dan, if you watch that Joe Leclerc presentation again, he was talking about closing off part of Carlos Street. I think the part that's near the wine room at the junction of Etheldor and Carlos. It's near past the post office. But
no, it was proposed to close it off near 16th, not near Etheldor.
Okay, that's the other thing. He didn't show us a map of that, but I thought he said that because of the wetlands right there are some cattails in that median strip between Highway 1 and Carlos. So I was thinking that's why he said they might not make that a park and ride. But I thought they were talking about making Carlos one way there. Okay, never mind.
That's because of the parallel trail proposal.
Okay, thank
And
you.
the park and ride was at the south end.
So Lucy Wicks has raised her hand. Lucy, could you speak?
Hi, thank you. I'm new, I'll put my video on. I'm new to the area and trying to get up to speed on some opportunities to get involved. And I'm just wondering, your special meeting next week, is that focused on, is there a particular document I should be focusing my attention towards there? Is it just the Connect to the Coast Side January 2020 draft?
If you go, two things. If you go to the MCC website and look at both Highway 1 projects, Connect the Coast Side, etc., you'll find many things. We've mentioned about 6 particular elements, pieces here that we'll both get out an email to people on our agenda distribution list and also post them on our site.
Okay, and that will be the focus of the meeting next week.
The focus is, right, Connect the Coast Side and most specifically on Moss Beach.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Good. Thanks for the comment. Thanks for attending. Anyone else? Okay. Then I will move ahead for any comments from meetings attended.
Claire, did you have something to say about the park and ride?
I don't need to say it.
What's that?
I don't need to say it, I guess. I was trying to explain that it wasn't in the location that Sid thought it was, but I don't need to go into it if you don't want me to.
Oh, go ahead.
The park and ride, as I understand it, was at South Etheldor as at Marine. where the sign is for Seton Coast side.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, I think it was actually proposed for the southern entrance of Etheldor and Highway 1.
Yes. On the
Okay,
north side of Etheldor or the south side, Dave?
On the southeast corner of the south intersection of Etheldor and Highway 1.
thank you. Okay, Kimberly Williams.
Hi, Lynn. I just want to say that I do not support the parking lot proposed for Moss Beach. And it was news to me in that last round of meetings that was on the table. So I would like that to be a topic at the July 29th meeting, sort of an informational on what are all the parking lots proposed and what kinds of lots those would be, and I guess just generally why they're there. That area in Moss Beach at the end of Etheldor, there's a lot of fledgling owls there usually every year. And I cannot support a parking lot there. I think also that it would invite weekend visitor traffic and be used more for that than it would be for commuting. So that is my opposition to that specific area for parking. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Kimberly. Okay. One last time, I don't see anybody else for tonight. Dave has given certainly one report on meetings he's attended. Does anyone want to have anything else?
I'm sorry, I have one question to go back. On the website, the Connect the Coast site is still from January, and there were other things that were passed out at the other virtual meetings. But is it still the way it is on the website? Are we still back to January 19?
Yes.
January 2020?
Yeah, that is the primary draft, and that remains a draft of reference till after, at some point, I believe in late August or early September, the planning department will begin the rewrite of a new draft.
Okay, so we are going to be working off that
Well, plus
document.
other documents that have raised questions.
Pardon?
What other documents have come in to speak on particular issues, and we'll also look at those.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
But to answer, yes, the documents presented at the last 3 virtual meetings by the county are all fair game for the study session.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I think in those cases, for example, what we like is something that lets you get to particular pieces. So what Dave is mentioning there, about 8 documents that are on the county's webpage for Connect the Coast side. Okay, well, look, I appreciate the effort. I also appreciate people's concerns and critiques. So we will work with that. Dave, I see you have your hand back up.
It's for the council activities.
Okay, Sid Young.
Hi, there was a lady before, about 2 speakers ago, I didn't catch her name, but she was saying what should she do to participate in the meeting on the 29th. And I would say to watch I think it was the video of the meeting where Joe Leclerc gave his PowerPoint presentation, and it covered extensively Moss Beach. And it did cover that Connect the Coast side edition that had to do more with Mid-Penn. So if she or anyone wants to refresh the idea that he was putting out there, that video I thought was very helpful.
It's helpful, although it did venture into areas where he was taking a very fast pass. And as you said, we're trying to keep our focus on Connect the Coast side.
What do you mean by a fast pass?
He tried to make a quick update on the interior roads there between Cypress Point and down there.
Well, okay, but I'm just saying that he did cover a lot of the intersections too. So thanks. I just wanted to let her know. I didn't notice who she was. So
yeah, that
Thank
was
you,
Lucy.
Sid.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, Dave, you were going to speak on meetings.
Yeah, I attended the study sessions Half Moon Bay City Council meeting last night on quote unquote parking permits and other parking issues raised primarily by residents in Miramar on the west side and the Alsace-Lorraine area around Kelly Beach, although not restricted to that. The city presented, city engineer Moz presented sort of a list of issues and possibilities. No decisions were made. And there was a lot of discussion about why the parking permit program was almost certainly not going to be implemented, mostly due to Coastal Commission concerns. City of Newport Beach has been trying for 2 years to put a permit parking program in place around their beaches, and the Coastal Commission keeps sending it back to them. So the Half Moon Bay Review also has a very good article on that, and that video is also viewable on the city's website, or will be in a couple of days for anybody interested in that.
Anyone else with meetings attended or other things you want to share on the council?
I was also at that meeting last night, and just FYI that Half Moon Bay was going to put on the ballot the hotel tax, TOT. They want to raise it up to 15%, and it's currently at 12, and it's going to be one of the highest in the county, if not the highest. And just for an example, just down the street at the Oceana, or up the street, it's only 10% for the occupancy tax. So it's probably going to pass. It's going to be tiered, where they're going to raise it to 14, and then it'll go up another 1% either in 6 months or a year.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? We are trying to, in terms of future agendas, both reaching out to parks, to the Harbor District and DPW for briefing by the senior people there with responsibility for the coast side. And I think after this study session, we'll basically assess what more we can do in that area beyond meetings the county will call, as well as try to get underway with other departments that we have not gotten to yet this year. Okay, I'll take the motion to adjourn.
One quick addition.
Sure.
So, it's no surprise to everybody that I am extremely concerned and interested in the traffic on Highway 1, and that I have given some of my personal time to kind of monitor and witness and video record examples from Coronado, Frenchman's Creek, Devil Slide, and as far as I think the community's probably interested in, what is the maximum flow? How many cars per minute travel on Highway 1? And so from my early study, I'm coming up with between, of course it varies quite a bit, but it's something between 17 to 24 cars a minute.
Okay. Is that at a particular location you observed it?
I've been doing this for a number of years. I used to say, 20 cars a minute. It's about the average. And that's pretty much across the board. I could measure it as all the cars leaving 92, right? At Crystal Springs. That's a fair measurement point. How many cars are crossing, passing 92 at Crystal Springs? That's a fair measurement. Measurement at Devil Slide, just south of the I should say the North Portal, just north of the tunnel. I'm sorry, the bridge. Coronado, Frenchman's Creek, Capistrano Road. a variety of measurements. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Sid, you're back again.
I am, and I just was going to add about the Half Moon Bay City Council meeting that I listened for a while, and they want to put signage up to send everybody up to the northern beaches. I don't know. They were talking about one beach that is a state beach that doesn't get any, they don't have a parking attendant there or anything, but I suspect they're just going to try to send all the looky-loo drive around people from Half Moon Bay up our way. But that's just my, take on how they were talking about putting up signs directing people how to get north to the other beaches. So thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sid.
Yeah, that was Venice Beach, the huge parking lot.
Okay, I'm still looking to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Lynn, I did want to make one more comment on meetings attended.
Yes.
So I've been attending these COVID task force or these meetings that the county puts on. And one of the things that came out of it today was that, while all the other counties in the Bay Area are on this watch list, we are not yet on the watch list, even though our case rate is actually exceeding the threshold. And our county health officer, Scott Morrow, has been doing a lot of work to try to keep us off that watch list, because what that means if we do go on it is that they'll have to close down a whole bunch of additional businesses like hair salons, nail salons, breweries, and things like that. So I just wanted to put that information out there, and it could happen any day now. Hopefully we will lower our case rate and stay off that watch list, but just wanted to make everyone aware of that.
Okay.
Cute baby Michelle.
Oh, thank you. She's sleeping. She's
good to have you back with the meetings, Michelle.
Yeah, it might have to be like this for a while, but I can be here.
Okay, very
That's
good.
the one positive of the remote meetings.
Okay, good. Okay, then I will declare we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, for all your work.
Thank you.